A 14-year-old girl disappeared, and a year later her remains were discovered in the front compartment of a Tesla linked to TikTok creator D4vd, the artist known for the song Romantic Homicide. In a backstage clip that surfaced online, he's seen holding a black wig that closely resembles the hairstyle Celeste once had. Around the same time, some listeners began to notice how his lyrics seemed to align with the dates connected to her disappearance. Was it simply coincidence, or something deeper hidden in plain sight? The photos, online activity, and digital records we're about to explore could shed new light on the mystery surrounding the Tesla, the rising fame, and the young girl who never made it home. It all began like many missing person stories do, with a single flyer. On April 5, 2024, 13-year-old Hernandez was reported missing from her family's home in Lake, California. Her loved ones searched tirelessly, neighbors joined in, and for months the community held on to hope, wondering where she could have gone. As time went on, fragments of Celeste's life began to resurface, moments that made her story far more complex than anyone could have imagined. 2 months after she was first reported missing, on June 2, 2024, Celeste showed up at a family gathering. Someone recorded her laughing, eating, and chatting among relatives. She didn't look frightened or lost. She looked like a normal teenager trying to convince everyone that things were fine. That brief appearance completely disrupted the original timeline. How could she have been listed as missing if she was still showing up at home? Then another sighting turned everything upside down. A neighbor's Nest camera recorded her outside late at night on September 8, 2024, just a day after her 14th birthday. The footage captured her walking up the driveway, arguing with other neighborhood kids. Her voice sounded confident, even defiant, like any spirited teenager in a heated moment. What made it so unsettling was the date. It was 5 months after she was thought to have disappeared. That night, she was alive, energetic, and still in her own neighborhood. The most chilling part came almost a year later when another clip appeared online. It was a blurry video from a concert in Maryland on August 24, 2025, showing a girl in a black top, ripped jeans, and long dark hair standing next to a tall young man who looked very much like the singer David Burke. When people zoomed in to compare details, the bracelets, the hair, the smile, it looked remarkably like Celeste. If that truly was her, it would mean she was seen alive just 2 weeks before investigators made their discovery. Her outfit in the clip even matched what was later described in the official report. The once clear timeline had completely unraveled, leaving everyone questioning what really happened to Celeste Rivas Hernandez. By early September, the story had taken a turn no one could have predicted. On September 8, 2024, authorities made a shocking discovery inside a Tesla parked along Donny Drive in the Hollywood Hills. The car had been sitting there for weeks, gathering dust, with multiple tickets left under the windshield wiper. It wasn't until the vehicle was towed on September 5 that workers noticed something unusual. When they opened the front compartment, they were met with an unbearable odor. Inside the vehicle, authorities discovered something that immediately drew their attention: a large object carefully wrapped in layers of clear plastic. Because of its condition, investigators initially struggled to determine who it belonged to. Later, it was confirmed to be 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. The way it was packaged suggested that someone might have attempted to hide or contain evidence at the scene. Among the few identifying details was a small red tattoo on her right index finger that read, "Shoe," a feature her mother had mentioned in earlier reports. That single detail brought heartbreaking confirmation of her identity. Detectives began reconstructing the timeline. From the parking citations and the car's heat exposure, they estimated that the Tesla had been left there since around August 26, sitting under the late summer sun for nearly 2 weeks before being towed. For days, it had blended in unnoticed among other parked cars on the quiet street. When the vehicle was finally removed, the truth emerged from one of the most unexpected places. Investigators later identified the car as being registered to David Burke, a young recording artist who had recently completed a tour. That discovery turned what had seemed like a tragic mystery into a case that would soon capture national attention. How did a missing teenager end up connected to his car? Was she already gone before the vehicle was parked, or was there something far more complicated behind it? A timeline slowly began to emerge. April marked her disappearance. June brought a family sighting. August 24th, a concert. And September 8th, the heartbreaking discovery. Each date traced a fragile line between hope and tragedy. As forensic teams examined the wrapping material and collected DNA, one fact became undeniable: Celeste hadn't simply vanished. Someone had made her invisible to the world. He was 20, a rising musician with millions of online plays, a new lease on a home in the Hollywood Hills, and a life that seemed to shine with success. She was just 11 when they first crossed paths. By 13, she had begun spending time in his social circle, a world of cameras, nightlife, and people much older than her. Her name was Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and the man she referred to as her boyfriend was David Burke, known to most as David. According to those who knew her, Celeste often used fake IDs. Some listed her as 18 or 19, others as a college student. With her confidence, mature style, and makeup, few questioned her age. Soon, she was seen at social events, small gatherings, and eventually at the Hollywood Hills home rented for about $20,000 a month. Neighbors described it as a party house, a place of constant music and movement. Somewhere in that chaos, Celeste disappeared again, this time not only from her family, but from the safety of her youth. Photos and clips later revealed what many had only whispered. She wasn't just a fan. She was part of his daily life. In one livestream, her voice could be heard off camera, playfully teasing him. In another, she briefly appeared in the background before stepping away. Comments flooded in calling her his girlfriend, and he never denied it. What had seemed like an innocent friendship between a fan and a musician no longer looked the same once the timeline came into focus. Celeste's older brother, Matthew, shared that the family knew she had been spending time with David. It wasn't a secret at home. Some even believed her parents felt she was safer with him than being on her own. Celeste had once disappeared before and was later found near Hollywood, the same area where David lived. So when she went missing again, they assumed she was with him. They convinced themselves she would come back, just like before. But she never did. As investigators looked deeper, a troubling pattern appeared. Celeste's fake IDs, her long absences from school, and her online presence all pointed to a double life, one hidden in plain sight. Friends remembered her saying she wanted to be treated like an adult, and that she was tired of being controlled at home. David, older and charming, seemed to offer her what she craved, freedom that felt like love. To many, it resembled the pattern of slow manipulation disguised as affection, where a teenager is made to believe she is ready for something far beyond her understanding. There were reports suggesting that David or people in his circle may have allowed a runaway to stay with them without informing authorities. Whether it came from carelessness, fear, or poor judgment, the situation spiraled far beyond control. When investigators later searched the rented house, they described a chaotic space filled with music gear, signs of parties, and constant movement. They conducted forensic tests, though the results were never made public. What was known is that many people had access to that home, and even to David's car. Some later claimed they had seen Celeste there more than once. By then, the public saw the story in a completely new light. It was no longer just about a musician and a fan. It was about a young girl who got lost inside someone else's world. It was a story about a young man in his 20s who lived with a teenage girl, while the adults around them chose not to see what was happening. The fake IDs, the cheerful live streams, and the quiet acceptance from those who should have protected her all created a timeline of neglect mistaken for freedom. By the time authorities connected the details, the Hollywood residence, the altered documents, the video clips, the damage had already been done. Celeste's life had turned into a heartbreaking reminder of misplaced trust and lost innocence. The moment that reignited public attention came from a short backstage video filmed after the Maryland concert on August 24, 2024. The low-quality clip shows David Burke walking down a dim hallway, still sweating from the performance. In his hand, he holds what appears to be a long black wig, twirling it lightly as he laughs with someone off camera. The moment seems both casual and strangely uncomfortable, quickly becoming one of the most discussed images in the entire investigation. Viewers debated what they were seeing. Some thought the wig represented something symbolic and troubling, while others suggested it was used to hide or clean something. A few people believed it was simply a stage prop, unrelated to anything else. Yet the timing was impossible to ignore. That concert marked the last confirmed event before Celeste's disappearance. In the video, David doesn't mention the wig, but when someone brings up Celeste's name, the camera catches him smirking briefly and looking away. That small reaction ignited a storm online. People slowed the footage frame by frame, analyzing his expression, comparing it with past moments from his live streams. The familiar nervous smile, the same subtle gestures, it all seemed to fuel more questions. Even other creators commented on it. One streamer called the clip deeply suspicious. Another paused during a live discussion and said quietly, "Something about this feels off." Their reactions spread fast, amplifying the public's unease. When one of David's collaborators, Jason Lewin, was asked about the video during his own stream, he froze, gave an awkward smile, and stayed silent for a few seconds. That brief silence was enough for the internet to turn it into a viral meme, labeled the guilty look. Whether the wig was an innocent prop, an attempt to conceal something, or just coincidence, one fact remained clear. The footage was captured on August 24th, the night Celeste was last seen alive. Under the dim glow of the stage lights, David held something that appeared to be a black wig, gently swaying in his hand. In stories like this, it is often the smallest details that speak the loudest. Among them, the wig has become a powerful symbol, one that represents the darker and more complex side of David Burke's connection to Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Whether mentioned by those close to the case or imagined in countless retellings, it has come to stand for control, secrecy, and the uneasy sense of possession that seemed to define their bond. Psychologists say an object like that can carry deep meaning. For some, it reflects the desire to hold on, to preserve a part of someone or reshape their image. For others, it can symbolize an effort to erase traces of truth, to rewrite a story that has already been written. Holding or keeping something so personal often mirrors the behavior of people who struggle to let go. They cling to small reminders, a photo, an object, fragments that keep the illusion alive. One investigator put it simply, Celeste's story is that of a young girl who never had the chance to experience the ordinary milestones of growing up, moments like prom night or graduation. In that light, the wig becomes more than an accessory. It turns into a haunting reminder of innocence lost, of a youth that never had time to unfold. The public's reaction to this image has been intense. Some see it as undeniable evidence, while others believe it is only a symbol, something the human mind creates when reality feels too painful to accept. The silence of those around David only deepened the mystery. One of his collaborators, when asked about Celeste, paused for a moment and said nothing. That brief hesitation, caught on camera, became part of the story itself, replayed endlessly by those searching for meaning. Whether the wig was real or purely symbolic, its message is chillingly clear. It represents what happens when affection turns into control, when secrecy replaces honesty, and when obsession blurs the line between care and possession. Even now, as people listen to David Burke's songs, some hear more than music, they hear echoes of a story that may have been unfolding long before anyone noticed. His breakout song, Romantic Homicide, was released on September 7, 2022, the same day Celeste Rivas Hernandez turned 12. The coincidence felt strange, and the lyrics made it even more haunting. The song told a story of deep obsession, heartbreak, and betrayal, describing love so intense that it became painful to bear. At first, people saw it as a work of art, emotional and poetic. But after Celeste's passing, listeners began to hear it differently. Every lyric suddenly sounded like a personal message, almost like a confession hidden within the melody. Another song, rumored to have been recorded privately and never officially released, was said to be titled Celeste. In a leaked verse, he reportedly mentioned her name as something permanent, and described sleepless nights filled with thoughts of her. If true, those words revealed not romance, but fixation, a kind of emotional entanglement that blurred the line between affection and control. Whether the song was meant as tribute or reflection, it showed how much space she occupied in his mind and art. The imagery extended beyond his lyrics. In one of his music videos, David appeared in a scene where he placed a mannequin representing a lifeless figure into a car's trunk. The sequence was stylized and clearly intended as performance art, but in hindsight, it took on a chilling new meaning. Analysts pointed out how difficult it was not to notice the parallel between that fictional scene and the real-life discovery that would later make headlines. Some defended it as artistic symbolism, a creative way to express grief and loss. Others, however, struggled to separate imagination from reality, especially when the imagery seemed to echo real events too closely. When art mirrors life in such an uncanny way, coincidence begins to feel less accidental. Whether intentional or not, Romantic Homicide became more than just a song. It felt like the first piece of a dark narrative that, 2 years later, ended with Celeste's name no longer belonging to a fan but to a tragic story that shook everyone who had once listened to his music with admiration. At first, people loved the song for its raw emotion, believing it was simply about heartbreak, until the story behind it made those words impossible to hear the same way again. But after Celeste Rivas Hernandez was reported gone, those same lyrics stopped sounding poetic and started feeling like confessions wrapped in melody. Lines once praised for their raw honesty began to sound like clues. "I'm scared of what I'm becoming," one verse says. Words that once expressed pain now seemed to carry the weight of remorse. Listeners who had memorized every lyric went back to the songs, searching for meaning they might have overlooked. The shift was immediate. Fans who used to say, "He just writes from emotion," began asking, "Was he trying to tell us something?" Every verse was analyzed word by word. One online comment summed it up. "He isn't just writing about heartbreak. He's writing about control, about wanting someone so badly that losing them feels impossible." Suddenly, it wasn't just music anymore. It felt like a psychological journal. The discussion grew even more intense when people noticed the timeline. Romantic Homicide was released on Celeste's 12th birthday, and another rumored song, Celeste, allegedly described her name inked on his chest. What had once seemed like affection began to look more like fixation. Fans started comparing his lyrics to real events, connecting words about betrayal and silence to her disappearance. Even small phrases, "Don't say her name, you were never supposed to leave," began to sound hauntingly symbolic. Some called it art imitating life. Others said it was life mirroring art. Either way, the emotional shift was impossible to ignore. What once united his audience began to divide it, half defending him, half wondering whether they had missed warning signs hidden in plain sight. One line captured the feeling perfectly. After that song, people stopped hearing art. They started hearing evidence. In the end, the music that once felt personal now feels haunted. The same lyrics that once comforted broken hearts now echo through a story too painful to forget. On screen, words appear one by one, glowing faintly against the dark, as voices whisper the question no one dares to say aloud: was this song his confession all along? There were moments that made everything feel too real, short glimpses of Celeste appearing beside D4vd, laughing, teasing, or quietly standing just outside the frame. In one clip described by fans, she leans toward him and whispers softly, "Delete it." He glances at her, gives a faint smile, and ends the stream seconds later. At first, it all seemed harmless, just a small, playful moment that might happen off camera. But once the truth about Celeste Rivas Hernandez's age came to light, that single word, delete, took on a completely different meaning. From that moment on, every clip or live stream where she appeared beside D4vd felt different. In another recorded moment, while D4vd was adjusting his camera, a voice believed to be Celeste's could be heard saying softly, "Don't show the window." The angle shifted immediately, removing the street from view. What once looked like a simple act of privacy now appeared intentional, as if someone was trying to keep their location hidden. Neighbors would later confirm what investigators had already begun to suspect. Celeste had been staying at the Hollywood Hills house for months. One woman living across the street told officers, "I saw her walking the dog and picking up the mail. She didn't seem like she was hiding." Another neighbor said she assumed Celeste was either a relative or a young assistant, because she moved so comfortably in and out of the house. But behind those everyday moments, the truth was much more serious. D4vd was 20 years old, while Celeste was only 13. Authorities began investigating whether this situation involved more than just poor judgment, whether it crossed into something far more troubling. There were already school records, a missing person report, and even messages exchanged with her family. Despite that, Celeste continued living there, surrounded by adults who either didn't know or didn't question what was happening. As one investigator described it, "He knew she was underage, and he let her stay. That's not protection, that's hiding her." Looking back now, those short video clips feel like glimpses into a hidden truth, moments where guilt was quietly sitting in plain sight. The camera caught smiles, laughter, and casual exchanges, but beneath that surface was something unsettling: a young girl who should have been home, and a man who didn't make sure she was. When people later realized that D4vd had deleted many of his past live streams, the discussion reignited, and the world began to wonder what might have been erased along with them. Was he trying to protect his reputation, or was there something he didn't want anyone to find? Removing old videos isn't against the law, but the timing made people uneasy. The deleted clips were the same ones where Celeste Rivas Hernandez could be seen beside D4vd, moments where her voice was heard, where she said his name, and where she quietly told him to delete it. What once looked like harmless moments began to feel like signs of awareness, fragments of truth hidden beneath laughter. Experts who later analyzed the situation described his behavior as an instinct for self-preservation, the digital version of trying to erase traces of the past. It didn't seem like an act of panic, but rather something intentional. That single difference changed the entire perspective. Maybe he wasn't just trying to avoid embarrassment. Maybe he was already thinking ahead, aware that others might start asking questions. The act of deletion spoke volumes. If everything had truly been innocent, why remove it completely? Protecting privacy is one thing, but taking down every session that showed Celeste beside him suggested something more deliberate. Some believed it was an attempt to manage public perception, a young artist afraid of losing his clean image. Others felt it revealed something deeper, an effort to erase the record of a relationship that never should have existed. Online discussions reflected that divide. One person wrote, "You only erase history when it can be used against you." Another argued, "People delete things all the time out of fear or pressure. It doesn't prove anything." Somewhere between those views lies the uncomfortable truth, that deleting something can be both a shield and a silent confession. In the end, the missing videos spoke louder than any that remained. Their absence left a silence filled with unanswered questions. Whether it came from guilt, fear, or careful calculation, D4vd's choice to erase his digital past only deepened the uncertainty. Sometimes, what disappears says more than what stays behind. And it was on the night of September 18, 2024, that everything changed. The street outside the Hollywood Hills home was unusually still when unmarked vehicles arrived just after sunset. Within minutes, the driveway was filled with investigators wearing gloves and carrying flashlights. They had a warrant to search the residence linked to D4vd, the 20-year-old musician whose Tesla had become central to a growing investigation. What they discovered inside shifted the story from rumor to serious concern. Forensic teams entered through the back, carefully documenting every room. They used a chemical test designed to highlight hidden traces of biological material. Several faint reactions appeared on the bedroom floor and near the laundry area. The patterns were small, not enough to confirm anything conclusive, but impossible to ignore. Under ultraviolet light, faint streaks and marks glimmered, signs that something might have been cleaned or removed. From the bedroom closet, investigators collected various clothing items. Among them was a white shirt with light reddish stains folded neatly on a shelf. One report described it as similar to what D4vd had been seen wearing during his Maryland show. The shirt was immediately sealed for testing. Nearby, they also recovered a few strands of synthetic black hair, later identified as part of a wig. Together, these two items added layers to a story that seemed increasingly complex. Authorities also seized electronic devices, phones, tablets, and external drives, believed to contain digital records, deleted content, or communication data. The information gathered will be cross-referenced with vehicle logs and timestamps from public appearances. Investigators remained at the house for more than 6 hours, removing boxes of equipment, samples, and storage devices before securing the property with evidence tape. By the next morning, D4vd was gone. Neighbors reported seeing him leave shortly after the search, his car packed with luggage. No one saw him return. The timing raised more questions than it answered. Why leave so suddenly, if there was nothing to conceal? The materials collected that night remain unverified, but their implications are striking. A shirt marked with traces suggests a moment of proximity. The wig points to an element of disguise or performance. The digital cleanup hints at deliberate control. When considered together, these fragments form a quiet narrative, one about image, erasure, and the desire to manage both perception and truth. You can tidy a room, you can clear a surface, but luminol doesn't lie. Its faint glow may fade, yet it never forgets what once existed. No official findings have been released regarding the samples collected that evening. Still, for many observers, the image of that glowing blue light inside David Burke's bedroom has become symbolic, the instant when certainty began to fracture. Whether those traces are connected to Celeste Rivas Hernandez or not, the search left behind a message that couldn't be hidden. Someone had gone to great lengths to remove something that perhaps should have remained untouched. The case was eventually reassigned to the Robbery Homicide Division, the unit responsible for the city's most complex and delicate investigations. Their focus shifted away from speculation and online theories, turning instead toward verifiable evidence linked to Celeste Rivas Hernandez and David Burke. The Tesla where she was found became their central reference point. Modern Teslas record nearly everything. 6 cameras, front, rear, and side, can capture footage even when the car is parked. Analysts are reviewing the recordings frame by frame to determine who accessed the vehicle, when it was parked, and whether the trunk had been opened before impound. The data could reveal who last handled the car and how long it remained stationary on Dahani Drive before being towed. Investigators are also studying the car's GPS and battery logs to retrace its movements in the days preceding the incident. In a nearby storm drain, officers recovered a Tesla key card, water-damaged but still scannable. One internal note read, "Prints may be recoverable from the upper edge." The fact that it appeared to have been discarded in haste suggested an atmosphere of urgency rather than calm. Someone seemed to be creating distance from the car, making sure they couldn't be tracked. Alongside the Tesla recordings, investigators gathered security camera footage from nearby houses, hoping to trace the last movements connected to the property. One clip showed headlights arriving just after midnight, while another captured a person walking toward the car before it was later found abandoned. Detectives also reviewed cell phone data and location records, comparing David Burke's movements with the Tesla's route history. Though the timeline was not yet complete, it revealed a pattern of overlap: the car near his home, his phone in the same area, and then both going offline at nearly the same time. As of October 6, 2025, no arrest has been made, and David Burke has not been publicly identified as a suspect in the case. Authorities are still waiting for toxicology and forensic reports, a process that could take several months. For now, he remains free. One investigator summarized the situation by saying, "We have pieces of the puzzle, but not the full picture yet. Until the results are complete, the question lingers: was Celeste Rivas Hernandez's death a tragic accident, or is there more waiting to be uncovered?" When the investigation began to include people close to David, one of the first names mentioned was Josh Marshall, his longtime manager and the person who oversaw his professional life. As public attention on the case grew, Marshall faced increasing scrutiny. Many wanted to know what he knew and when he knew it. In response, Marshall stated that he had no knowledge of anything connected to the situation. He explained that he never received any messages or contact from Celeste's family, and that he did not live in California. According to him, his work managing David's career was done remotely from another state, using calls and messages to handle business matters such as scheduling and contracts. He also said he had never met Celeste and was unaware that she had ever been at the Hollywood Hills property. Investigators later confirmed that his name appeared on the house lease only as a co-signer, a financial formality rather than evidence of residency. Still, his distance didn't fully remove suspicion. To some observers, it seemed unlikely that someone managing David's career could have been completely unaware of what was happening around him. One investigator put it cautiously. He may not have known the daily details, but he still benefited from that environment. It was a quiet suggestion that sometimes, not knowing can be convenient. Marshall, however, maintained that his role was purely professional. "My job was to keep his career on track," he said firmly. "Whatever happened at that house, I had no involvement." Meanwhile, the digital evidence continued to tell its own story, one built on timestamps, data trails, and unanswered questions. Emails and phone data collected during the search revealed that David Burke and Josh Marshall had been in regular contact in the weeks leading up to the discovery of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Their exchanges appeared strictly professional, focusing on tour schedules, show logistics, and contract updates. Yet, the complete absence of Celeste's name, given the circumstances, raised a quiet but important question. Was she being kept invisible, even to those within his closest circle? Marshall's denial might be genuine, or it could represent part of a larger effort to distance himself from the situation. For now, authorities continue to treat him as a witness rather than a suspect, another name connected to a story marked by silence, secrecy, and a car that may still contain answers too difficult to face. When investigators opened the front compartment of the Tesla on September 8, 2024, they made a discovery that left the entire team in silence. Inside, they found evidence later confirmed to be connected to 14-year-old Celeste. Due to the effects of heat and time, identifying her at first proved challenging. The material surrounding the discovery indicated that it had been carefully enclosed, and the coroner's early report noted that the environment had caused significant deterioration, consistent with prolonged exposure to high temperatures. The late summer heat of California had accelerated the process, causing changes that would normally take weeks to occur in just a few days. The coroner noted that the enclosed space created by the plastic wrapping had trapped heat and gases, producing a sealed environment. This led to swelling and the separation of tissue in certain areas. One observation in the preliminary report stood out to investigators. Portions of the body showed signs not consistent with natural decomposition. That single phrase shifted the focus of the entire investigation, implying that human interference after death could not be ruled out. To better determine the timeline, forensic entomologists were brought in. Their analysis of insect activity, specifically adult flies, eggs, and larvae, suggested that colonization likely occurred between August 24 and September 3. These findings closely matched the last confirmed sighting of Celeste at David's Maryland performance, and the estimated window when the Tesla was left unattended. The insects, in effect, provided a silent timeline, an account of time, temperature, and stillness that the body itself could no longer tell. As for the cause of death, investigators continued to evaluate several possibilities, including restricted breathing, sharp injury, or a substance-related complication. The coroner confirmed there were no clear signs of gunshot wounds, blunt trauma, or major fractures. The wrapping material itself could have limited airflow if applied while the victim was still breathing, or it might have been used later to contain odor and fluids. For now, the exact cause remains undetermined. What is certain is that every detail uncovered so far adds to a growing picture of tragedy, secrecy, and unanswered questions. Either way, it suggested an effort not of protection, but of concealment. Toxicology tests were ordered immediately, with samples of blood, tissue, and hair collected to check for substances such as opiates, sedatives, or other chemicals. Due to a backlog at the state lab, results could take several months to process. That delay left investigators with more uncertainty than clarity, and for those following the case, it created an uncomfortable truth. The cause of Celeste Rivas Hernandez's passing remained open to interpretation. It could have been an act of violence, an accidental overdose, or something that fell between the two. The condition of her body was both a scientific challenge and an emotional wound. Investigators described the scene as quiet, clinical, and deeply surreal. There were no clear signs of a struggle inside the car, yet the layers of plastic suggested preparation. Someone had taken deliberate time to wrap her, layer by layer, before leaving the car in the heat. Forensic experts later estimated that she had been deceased for at least 5 to 10 days before being discovered. This timeline aligned closely with the period when her phone stopped transmitting data, when David Burke's car stopped moving, and when her name vanished from all communication. Science could reveal how and when, but not why. Still, inside that sealed car beneath the California sun, the truth was beginning to surface. As the case unfolded, 2 main theories began to take shape, each one tragic, and each one possible. The first theory, and the one that disturbs many the most, suggests that David Burke may have been directly involved. Those close to Celeste have pointed to what they describe as signs of manipulation that began when she was only 11. At the time, he was 20, a rising musician known for his charm and talent, someone older and more experienced than anyone she had ever met. Over time, what began as attention seemed to shift into something more controlling, where concern blurred into control, and affection became obsession disguised as care. The signs of control were visible in many ways. The wig that resembled her own hair, the songs filled with dark themes, and the constant isolation from the outside world all pointed to the same pattern. In this version of the story, the night she passed away wasn't an accident but a moment when everything finally broke down. Some believe there may have been an argument, a burst of fear, or an emotional outburst that ended tragically. According to this theory, she lost her life that night, and her body was later wrapped in plastic and placed in the front compartment of the Tesla. The imagery eerily mirrored the visuals from his own artistic work. For those who believe this version, it wasn't coincidence but intent hidden in plain sight. Stripped, as if someone was trying to erase every trace of themselves. Soon after, the search for truth is ongoing, and many questions remain unanswered.